Good morning, BTC plebsy. Good morning, friends. Good morning, my man. How you doing? Ben, good morning, Bitcoiners. Indeed, good morning. P-Man, rain's falling, Bitcoin's running, and it's Moscow time. Moscow time's coming. We got a good Moscow time today. Moscow time is just, it keeps providing for us. Good morning, indeed. Bon matin à tous. Good morning, Bitcoiners. Hoddle T. Washington. Morning, man. Habib. Good morning, everyone. Indeed, good morning. When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love, and to have Bitcoin. Where do I sats? That is a perfect way to start your day. That's lovely. That's how I think. I couldn't get more excited for the time we're living in. I'm super optimistic. In my upcoming book, The Bitcoiner's Guide to NPC Management, you'll see that that's one of the main things you can do is just express positivity and optimism. And first of all, it can identify your NPC because usually they're a little allergic to it. And then they'll sort of tip who they are, what kind, and then pretty easy to manage after that. So there you go. I'm in Mass and can confirm a sunrise. Thank you, BTC plebsy. It's hard for me to confirm today because it is so cloudy and dark here in good old Montreal, but we love it. It's a nice day. Hit the like to boost the algos. Where do I sats? Love it. We love the like button. We're big fans. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Hirsch, Enmity. Good morning. Hope you're doing well. Greg, good morning. Need one of Sailor's mugs. Yeah, I think so. Maybe we'll do our own mug sometime, Maybe we'll do our own mug. Maybe we will do our own mug. Morning, Bitcoiners. Morning, bud. Hope you're doing great. Still dark here in California. I bet it is, Thomas, but be careful. That sounds pretty white supremacy. That it's early there too, so you got to be careful, Tom. I don't want to have to block you. 100% need a Count BTC mug. Yeah, we're going to do some of that stuff, Emily. We're going to do some of that stuff. But first, let's acknowledge that the sun is up, even if it's dark, even if shadows are appearing all over here. It's not as I don't get the sunlight in, but the sun is up, and I promise you, Bitcoin's running. You don't need to look. You don't even need to look. It's running great, right? So all that's left for us to do is have a coffee, talk about what's new. That was my last sip of coffee. I saved one for this. I didn't have time. I'm running out of coffee. I have to go out and get some after the show, but that'll be a nice little walk. I got plenty of good coffee shops around me where I am. King Mansa Musa, good morning from South Florida, where Bitcoin is always on our minds. Well, that's good to hear. That is good to hear. All right, let's get some Moscow time. So everyone's talking about this one, right? Now, this one again, so the COVID lab leak and all that, like how many times have we confirmed that it wasn't from a bat and that it was absolutely made in a lab? Now there's a new version of the story out here, and it's a little worse, but I'm not going to give you too many details yet. We are going to talk about it today. The CIA tried to pay off analysts to bury findings that COVID lab leak was likely. Whistleblower. So it's just news today. But while that is in the news, simultaneous to that, right, CDC letting us all know that the CDC advisors have recommended updated COVID-19 vaccines for all Americans 6 months of age or older. Well, there you go, guys. You got the tip. Now you know what to do. And in Canada, right, Canada's chief public health officer, Theresa Tam, thinks now is the time to get that mask ready, everyone. Right? Now is the time to get the mask ready. So get your mask, get your shot. But the lab leak, but don't pay attention to the CIA paying off scientists. That's not a part of the story, right? Get your mask, get your thing. I've got two stories here that are just so I'm gonna break form a little bit with Moscow time, and I'm actually gonna read some of the article. So I'm not just gonna give you the headline because the articles themselves are. It's almost like every sentence is another piece of Moscow time. So I didn't want to break up the consistency, but I'm not going to read you the whole article, just a few of them that are really, really good. So this one's really just MSNBC, of course, right? Of course. Opinion. You can talk about Biden's age, just not like this. If the media is going to question his fitness, we ought to answer those questions rather than asking them over and over again. So what did they say? Do they bring up, it's okay to ask questions about Joe Biden's health? Is that what you think the article said? So remember, the headline is it's okay to talk about his age, but not like that. Okay, so what's the not like that? It means if you read the article, you shouldn't criticize him, okay? Because he's doing great. He's doing great. There is almost nothing political reporters can't turn into a story about Biden's age. When his campaign rolled out a new wave of TV ads and public appearances, the New York Times described the initiative this way: as Democrat jitters grow, Biden campaign tries to showcase his vigor. The paper's story Monday on Biden's recent trip to Asia, which even Fox described as an all-nighter, was nevertheless titled, "It is evening, isn't it? An 80-year-old president's whirlwind trip." The next day, the Wall Street Journal ran a story headline, "Is Biden too old to run again?" We asked people born on his exact birthday if he shows signs of aging, and it makes the front page. If it doesn't, it's the occasion for a discussion of how he and his advisors are working to diffuse the issue. If we're going to ask the question, we ought to answer it too, rather than asking the question over and over again. It's perfectly fine to ask how age is affecting Biden. It's perfect, guys. It's perfectly fine. You can ask the question, okay? He's already the oldest president, and he'll be older and still in a second term. But if we're going to ask the question, we ought to answer it too, right? And we should be honest about what the answer is. That's where the coverage is already falling short. This is where it gets great. We've seen little to indicate that Biden is suffering any real cognitive decline. This is an important point that stories about the president's age rarely mention. They don't. It's such an important point. So I can't even add details. Neither in his public appearances nor in any behind-the-scenes reporting have we learned that he's forgetting important information, falling asleep in meetings, becoming confused, or growing erratic in his decision-making. We've never seen that. We've never seen it. Biden does sound quite old in his speech. Okay, so he sounds old, right? He just sounds old, right? That's just because his throat is old. That's it. It's not his brain. It's just his throat, they're saying. It's just his throat. It's his tongue and his teeth and his throat and his voice box. It's not his brain, okay, guys? It's not his brain. You know it. So he does sound quite old in his speech, while he always had a tendency, but don't worry, he always had a tendency to ramble and pepper his comments with non sequiturs and sometimes mangled aphorisms. That's normal for him, right? He certainly sounds older now than he used to, right? Okay, well. Yet sounding old is not the same as thinking old, guys. You're so stupid. If you thought that he just acted old because he sounded old, it's not the same, idiots. Okay? Stop being dumb. Being a smooth and compelling public speaker is a part of the president's job, but it's not the most important part. Okay? So if he just mumbles and he goes on about dog-faced pony boys and tells things that aren't true about being at the 9/11 thing and not knowing where he is and going to bed, guys, that's not the same. That's just sounding old. That's not thinking old. Okay. So here's how they bring it all home. All right. Left without much evidence of substantive age-related difficulties, the press discussion on the issue has grown abstract. It's abstract now. Okay. It's abstract. The focus has shifted from facts to political implications, just as it did with Clinton's emails. This is the same as Clinton's emails. Biden is facing questions about his age and stamina and confronted with widespread concerns over his age, journalists tell us. Pollsters now regularly include questions about Biden's age in campaign polls. News organizations then report on those polls and ask the president himself about it. However predictable the answer, "I feel good," it becomes fodder for another round of stories on the issue. Right? So people are just so mean, right? That's the problem here. So to those of us in the media, we must admit our own role in the process of directing the electorate's attention. That's that's why I had to read the whole article, right? They actually come out and say we must admit our role in directing the electorate's attention. Do you think they're going to talk about the time when Hunter was getting arrested again and they were Hunter was getting out of trouble again, and Trump was getting arrested, and they brought all of your attention to the bottom of the ocean and a submarine that they knew had already sunk. Right? Is that the one they want to talk about directing the electorate's attention to the bottom of the ocean or to aliens in space? Which one, right? This is the kind of self-fulfilling prophecy the media so often produces. If it talks a lot about Biden's age, people tell posters and focus group moderators they're concerned about Biden's age, and then their concern will be used as a justification for the media to talk more about Biden's age. Oh, so unfair. This coverage will also omit the many ways voters who worry about Biden's age will still vote for him over Donald Trump because they have far greater fears about the Republican. If nothing else, those of us in the media must admit our own role. Communication scholars call this agenda setting in its classic formulation, right? So they go on here, and then the real kicker is that there's something we're not talking about. All right, what do you think that is? What do you think the other point here is, right? It's Trump's age. Of course, it's Trump's age, right? At the end of the next presidential term, he'll be 82, 2 years older than Biden is now. And there are plenty of reasons to question whether he is in possession of all of his faculties, right? Granted, Trump prefers stream of consciousness tirades to stumbling over words, and it can be hard to tell whether his deranged all caps Truth Social rants are just a performance or new evidence of a man losing his grip on reality. But perhaps we should pay them closer attention if we can detect any signs of dementia. Is that unfair? I'm asking questions, and now that I have, you might say questions are being raised about Trump's mental state. I don't happen to think his advanced age is the most disturbing thing about a potential second Trump presidency. There's so much about it that's terrifying. It can be hard to decide what to focus on. But it's just as legitimate a question as it is for Biden. So we might as well start asking, or maybe we can learn from 2016 and admit that the coverage that asks questions without honestly seeking answers doesn't do the voters any good. I had to read the whole thing. It was just, well, almost the whole thing. It was just too good. But if that's not enough, right? If that's not enough, I have one more Moscow time, which will lead us into our conversations for the day and our theme, Follow the Money. And this is actually, it couldn't be better. This is the Associated Press. And this is showing you everything that the MSNBC article just said. It's about agenda setting. It's about framing, right? So this is Moscow time, but also it's going to lead into what we're talking about. So here's the actual headline from the Associated Press. What's ahead now that Republicans are opening an impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden? Since gaining the House majority, House Republicans have aggressively investigated Biden and his son, claiming without evidence, that they engaged in an influence peddling scheme. So there you go. The Associated Press tells us about agenda setting explicitly, and there we go. So what happened yesterday? Indeed, Kevin McCarthy, the Republican chair, the House Majority Chair, has started an impeachment investigation or an inquiry, but it is not an impeachment process, nor will he be asking for a vote. This ended up having some pretty interesting implications because Matt Gaetz. Now, if you guys don't know who Matt Gaetz is, he's probably the most talented congressman there is out there. That's what I'm seeing, right? Maybe the other fella, Brian Massey, really strong. Of course, Rand Paul, always strong. But Matt Gaetz, I have a theory. It's absolutely unconfirmed, but my theory about Ron DeSantis's failures as a Republican candidate are directly related to Matt Gaetz no longer being his lieutenant. So when 2020 happened and there was sort of a reconsolidation of talent within the Republican bench, Matt Gaetz also got signaled out for some fake investigation about underage girls or something. But of course, there's never been an accuser. There's never been an actual crime. It was all just information laundering in order to sideline one of the most effective people. I had a theory that he was using back channels to give DeSantis information or tips or strategies, And that's how I think, anyway, DeSantis went on that string of home runs from 2020 until this year. And what I saw from Trump's campaign getting going and DeSantis launching his own campaign is he had a major defection, and it was Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz, of course, was never interested in DeSantis being president. And so this is all speculation on my end, right? Just looking at who's talented, who's not, and what happens when you get a talented person strategizing and thinking for you. So yesterday, Matt Gaetz is now pushing for impeachment votes, a whole series of votes, and they might lose them all, but he's actually going to go after the Speaker McCarthy for not proceeding with the impeachment earlier. So a lot of people saying this is a great move, right? This is a great move on Gaetz. This is a great move for Republicans. And what I see it as this, today our theme is follow the money, right? We've always said follow the money is a better predictive model than follow the science or follow anything else, right? Follow the money and you'll understand the incentive structures. You'll understand why people are making the decisions they're making. And so follow the money as it applies now to politics is really becoming what Bitcoiners have long dreamed about. We are seeing the systemic realignment away from red and blue, Democrat and Republican in America. And we're seeing the realignment to orange and green, the orange and green alignment, right? The rich versus or established elites. It isn't really even about money. It is about power. The money is just part of the power. And so it's turning into the green versus orange conflict or debate, or that's where the tension is, which is exactly where Bitcoiners want the fight to be, which is exactly what we've been pulling and angling and praying for years, right? As Bitcoiners, we've been hoping to recalibrate the fake prison of right and left, of red and blue, into something that is actually relevant to the majority of people on Earth, which is a follow the money argument. And you either follow the green money or you follow the orange money and all of the incentives that come along with it. And you can really tell the uniparty exists when you look at stuff like this. So Kevin McCarthy, if you remember, we covered it very closely. Kevin McCarthy, when he became the Speaker of the House Majority, signed a deal with what they're calling the, I guess they call them the Mighty 20. That's something that Steve Bannon has used to describe these people. It's your typical Lauren Boebert, Byron Donalds, Matt Gaetz, Paul Gosar, Anna Paulina Luna. A lot of the names you've seen before, Chip Roy. Right. A lot of these people you've seen come around, they get called all kinds of names. Oh, those losers. Right. They're kind of the ones that don't fit in, if you will, or they're a bit of the misfits. And they don't want McCarthy around anymore. So they're going to launch these impeachments. And if they don't work out, and if McCarthy doesn't play ball, it looks like they're going to go and try and chop his head off too. So here's what Kyle Becker says. Let's go to the tape on the evidence of Democrats gathered to launch impeachment against Trump. So first of all, that's really the reason, right? The reason why the Republicans are angry about this, or the Mighty 20, or I wouldn't even call them Republicans anymore, right? I think these are realignment people. These are, you can call them populists. They're all going to be Bitcoiners within this cycle, right? They're all going to understand. Eventually, they're going to understand we're not dealing with policies. We're not dealing with the Constitution. We're not dealing with anything that politics would have been able to frame before. We are dealing with incentive systems. We're dealing with actual, I guess you can call it spell casting, right? When you can actually control people with these incentive mechanisms, you get them to think of things themselves, you get them to do things themselves. And again, that's what makes Satoshi one of the great wizards of all time, is that he took humans as they were. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to be any different. You don't need to change. You don't need anything, right? If you get caught up in the Bitcoin standard, if you get caught up in the logic around Bitcoin, you're going to compete to tell the truth. You're going to compete to participate virtuously in the system, because that's what the incentives lead you to do. You're going to get more out of playing the game by those rules, as selfish as you are, because that's the way it works, right? That's Satoshi's, the thing that makes the whole system of Bitcoin genius, is that it does not require us to change. It accepts us for who we are. A lot like Christianity, a lot like, you know, the lessons that Jesus shared with us, right? He loves you no matter what, right? You can be part of a group that killed Jesus Christ for telling the truth, and unfairly, of course, right? Prosecuting him, killing him on a cross for what crime, right? Telling the truth. And he loves you anyway. That's a little bit like Bitcoin in the sense that it doesn't really matter what you do, right? As long as you're just being a normal human being, the system will accept you. And that includes being a selfish asshole. Right? It includes that, right? Absolutely includes that. It's a lot like the free speech argument. It's even speech you don't like. 1 second here. Child trying to come in for some reason. So here's what people are saying about the difference between impeachment this time, impeachment in 2020 when the Democrats did the Trump, and proof that follow the money is influencing politics to create a fake red and blue Democrat and Republican binary. And here's what Kyle Becker says, right? So the first one was a phone call for the impeachment number one, right? That was the perfect phone call. Right, the perfect phone call, which was quid pro quo. What's all this Shokin, Burisma, Hunter Biden stuff? You know, tell me or I won't give you money. Pretty normal job for a president to do, right? That is the job of a president. So they impeached him for that. The second one was his typical political speech, which was go be peaceful and and do some protesting, but don't break anything at the Capitol, right? So that's how they got him on the second time. Now let's go over the evidence for the GOP's impeachment inquiry into Biden. Bank records, shell companies, FBI testimony from a trustworthy witness, 2 IRS whistleblower testimony, witness testimony from business partners, mobile text, laptop documents, White House visitor logs, Air Force 2 travel logs, copying Hunter on official emails, hundreds of Burisma emails, Joe Biden using at least 3 known pseudonyms on emails, documentation that Hunter's sole purpose for his $83,000 a month board position was to take heat off Burisma, the evidence that Biden was responsible for pushing to fire the Ukrainian prosecutor, Joe Biden openly bragging about the idea for the quid pro quo threat to fire the prosecutor, Joe taking along a Burisma associate on his trip to Ukraine to ask for the firing of the prosecutor. All right, so it's a pretty deep list, and it looks, you know, I would say most people are satisfied by it. So, and I think would absolutely ask for more. Would absolutely ask for more inquiry, which is what we're getting, right? So the most chilling and unbelievable thing you'll see about all of this actually ends up coming from John Fetterman, who we love. We love John Fetterman more now with a follow the money argument and what he did yesterday. He absolutely must be in the running for president or leader of the Dem Party if Joe Biden goes away. So they catch John Fetterman and ask him, you know, underneath the Senate and some of the buildings, there's tunnels. There's like a subway system under the U.S. Capitol. There's a private subway they can take all around between different buildings, and there's some tunnels. The tunnels have been there forever. They exist in Canada as well. Our parliament has all these tunnels underground. I used to be an absolute expert on navigating them all. I knew where all of them were and all the secret tunnels and all that stuff. So it was a lot of fun. I used to get to experiment and sneak around the buildings a lot because I had, you know, top secret security clearance, so no one could tell me where I couldn't go. You'll often see that library in the back of the Canadian Parliament. It's a very beautiful round building. I used to just hang out there, and I used to go down into the archives all the time. There's like a deep basement in there where you can get maps and all kinds of crazy shit. So I used to, you know, spend a lot of time in these buildings. Love the tunnels. There's a secret bar in the Canadian one as well from the ancient days. So I believe there's a secret bar in the U.S. one as well. So they catch Biden in the tunnels yesterday, right? He's walking under the tunnels, and they catch him and they ask him about the impeachment announcement. And what does he do? If anyone hasn't seen it, you got to see it, right? So he comes in, Fetterman. This is why we love Fetterman. Fetterman, he would do more to actually show that money and power are the main orchestrating forces in the fake red and blue American political system. So that's why I just continue to want more Fetterman time, more airtime, more attention given to him. He could be as useful for hyper Bitcoinization as Trump 1, Biden 2. You know, if I had my way, I was 100% for Trump in 2016, 100%, right? Never doubted he was going to win for a minute. Believed that one day of a Trump president was just about all we needed to get the ball rolling on hyper Bitcoinization, because he would actually crack reality. He would force people out of the fake prison of the uniparty and the fake fights between right and left, the fake fights between the Bushes and the Clintons, the fake fights between all of these, the Obushtons, they call them, right? The Obushtons. So the Obushtons, which, you know, look, if you go back to the 90s in America, there was a point at the end of 1999, 2000, when Clinton was the president, when you could have squinted and still believed America was on its righteous track, right? Because the Bushes had gone away. They only managed one term. The Bushes had really been in power in the United States since around 75, right? Since 1975. Now, what do you mean 1975, the Bushes are in charge? Well, George Bush Sr. at the time was working closely with Gerald Ford, probably heavily involved in the impeachment of Nixon. And of course, Bush Sr. was the head of the Republican Party at the time that Nixon was the leader, and he backstabbed him, right? Everybody knows it. Everybody knows George Bush walked into his office, and when George Bush Sr. told Nixon he was quitting, that was actually the day he quit. So George Bush Sr. Ends up becoming the head of the CIA immediately after. And from there, he gets on the vice president ticket with Reagan. And you know, I don't think Reagan was in on the uniparty thing. I don't think he was a bit of a Biden guy, right? Like, not really. He had a handful of instincts that were right on, but how easy would it have been to manipulate Ronald Reagan when he was president? I mean, really easy, right? He had no real formal education or training. He was no Donald Trump, let's put it that way. He was not a pure bullshit detector. He was an actor. He was good at messaging things. He had a lot of skills and a lot of talents, and his instincts were 100% right on. But he was a bit of an innocent fella, right? Like Nixon didn't respect Reagan because he said Reagan doesn't even know what fight is going on. Like, he's not even aware of what's going on. He doesn't even know about the Bushes. Now, Reagan had a bad feeling about George Bush Sr. You guys know that, right? He didn't like him, didn't want him to be president, was not a fan. Another vice president who was foisted onto the candidate. So from there, he becomes president. Now, go back to that, what I was mentioning about the 90s. When you saw Clinton win, and I was a big Clinton fan as a youngster, right? I thought Clinton was super talented. Who could deny the charisma? A political candidate like that doesn't really come around often, right? This was world-class abilities in persuasion. I give Clinton my highest persuasion score, which is the following. And it's the same with Trump. You cannot be in a room with Donald Trump or Bill Clinton and keep your opinion. It's not possible. You can't. You will, no matter what opinion you have, change your opinion just by being in their presence. Doesn't mean you agree with them. They will force you either into the opposite position of theirs, or you will adopt their position. That's how their skills work. You don't get to keep your thoughts around them, right? They have that power. It's a type of magic, I guess you can call it. And so, ooh, sorry about that, veterans. Sorry you lost, man. Sorry about that. Yeah, they're not always great, I guess. I don't know. They were okay with my wife before, but it was a while ago. So if you were in the 1990s and you were positive and optimistic about America, as I was at the time, right? But then all of a sudden, this George Bush Jr. comes along, and it's like, well, who really supports this guy, right? And on 300 and something million people in America, and we got to go with a prince, we got to go with the son of, for the second time in history. And that's when you started doing the depressing math that there was either a Bush or a Clinton on every single U.S. ballot from 1980 until 2016, minus the 2012 one, where you still had Hillary around. lurking and getting ready for her 2016 run. But the idea here is that the Obamas sort of fit right into that Obushtin thing, right? Obushtins is what some people have called them, the Obushtins. And that's that uniparty thing. So when you see now that they need people like Fetterman, so this is what Fetterman does, right? So they're going in the tunnels and they get to Fetterman. And what does he do? He goes like this. Oh, they're going to impeach Joe Biden. Woo! And he starts mocking out of the opposite of fear. He's mocking the inability of these folks to touch Biden or Fetterman. Right? Now, I can't think of a better scenario than this. Malcolm Flex, aka Flextrain. If you guys don't know who Malcolm Flex is, another one of the great bro science people out there. We love the bro science. Bro science people they're going to get statues, and they're the greatest, right? So he says, John Fetterman basically said the quiet part out loud. The elite corporate politicians will never suffer or pay for their crimes when all their buddies are in on it and have the final say. Someone type a snarky response on an accessibility teleprompter so he can read it. So there you go. The idea here that these folks, can go out in the open like this and say things like that and mock this shows what level of power they're at. However, I continue to believe that Fetterman and Biden and all of these guys, of course, are way over their skis right now. Over their skis, if you guys don't know the expression, so if you fall on your skis, it's because you were too far forward on them and you trip. So they're a little over their skis here, and you could imagine the trip coming. And if you follow the money, you'll see very quickly how the trip is not only coming, but is almost there, right? So go back to this story about the CIA paying journalists to lie about paying scientists to lie about the origins of the thing. Brett Weinstein says here, we mustn't forget, not only did they lie about the origin of the virus, they also sought to destroy the reputation of anyone who followed the evidence to its logical conclusion. It's the same willingness to gaslight shown toward the vaccine injured. They're monsters. So people getting in here, why they were hiding it, right? Robert Malone, everyone bringing it up today. CIA whistleblowers claim evidence and that the agency bribed their own analysts to say COVID did not come from Wuhan. Bombshell report exposes alleged virus cover-up. 6 of 7 members on CIA COVID discovery team were given significant monetary incentive to change their position, according to whistleblower. So this makes it much easier for everyone to understand, right? The science, if you're expecting the general public or Americans or anyone who's been caught victimized by the red and blue brainwashing systems that keep people in their fake prisons, if you're worried about people's ability to see through it and come out of that and understand it, well, if it's a bunch of science reports, right, that red supports this science and blue supports that science, that doesn't work, right? No general population person can distinguish between those two. But if you start showing that money influenced one side of the debate, it's very easy for people to understand. I mean, super simple for people to understand. And the way this story is starting to break down into a simple follow the money exercise is actually perfect. It's perfect because it's going to train people that they can get sense of the fake, confusing, fake prison of two ideas, red, blue, uniparty, fake binary system, by being able to train and model themselves to follow the money and understand things a little more better, a little more accurately. And you can see it in, for example, here's the case in US schools, right? So this is why I think it's going to go further and not just end with follow the money in COVID or follow the money in politics. The realignment to green and orange really just comes with following the money and is way more relevant to almost any other thing, right? So Professor St. Onge says it right here, where we're going to start to see it even at the school level, right? So Professor St. Onge will speak at Bitcoin Amsterdam, October 12th and 13th, saying the following, saying the quiet part. Everyone's saying the quiet part out loud today, right? So Malcolm Flex said this quiet part out loud with Fetterman. Now we're seeing it again. This is with the Chicago mayor, right? So pressed on Chicago public schools' failure to educate children, the mayor responds he doesn't really grade by results. He grades by how much money he gives schools, right? So how much money he gives schools. So in other words, schools aren't for educating kids. They're for fleecing taxpayers, as St. Omer says. So again, Americans are going to get a lesson in training themselves to follow the money way more than following the argument, right? The only actual overlay you can put on top of this weapons grade information laundering and brainwashing capacity that exists out there is to follow the money, because that keeps the static away. That allows you to start making more sense of what's actually going on, right? You can see that with the media, right? Now there's this case here, right? The Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. Have you guys heard of these ones? So if you remember at the beginning of the summer, the LA Dodgers risked their entire brand their entire history, their entire brand. They've sort of been a Catholic team for years. They were from Brooklyn, right? They were the Brooklyn Dodgers. They moved to LA. They've got a stadium in LA. And they've been there. Shabazz Ravine, I guess there's a lot of Latin speakers there. So the team has this Catholic connection. So they brought in the gay month, right? The gay pride, and we're very LGBTQ plus positive here. We're not anti, what adults want to do with their time, but the messaging in the media and the fighting around this was actually absolutely insane. So the team invited these men who were drag queens, and they do a show, right? So they do the show. And I don't really know what's in the show, but there's kids in the stadium, and people definitely said, we don't want that. There were huge protests. There were baseball players for the team that said, I won't play for the team that day because this is too gross. But they ended up going with it anyway, right? So, and then there was all a bunch of media things. Oh, those stupid conservative people, right? Oh, they're so boring. They're not, why can't they be okay with these people that are just dressing like women and having fun? The NBC News covered it, of course, right? Meet the drag nuns caught up in the culture war over pride events. The Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, whose Los Angeles chapter will receive an award Friday, have been dedicated to community service for decades, right? Well, will that continue to be the case? So they caught one of them whacking off at a kids park on the weekend, right? So he was whacking off at a kids park. Now, here's something I never knew. You're going to love this. It's pretty funny. It's one of the Bowtied gang, Bowtied Bull and Bowtied Kong and all these people, right? So Bowtied Kong has been covering this for a while, and he made an observation a while ago that there's actually a public masturbation season. He wrote a Substack about it last year. Public masturbator season. So fall is public masturbation season, he writes in relation to this story. He wrote about this last fall, saying you're going to start to see all the public masturbators come out because the weather's changed. And here's what he says. Fall is public masturbation season. We get perps on park benches and the local forest preserves. I wrote about it last year. They love a stiff fall breeze. So this guy's arrested. He actually did it, right? He was whacking off with his car door open in the park, and he still had his makeup on when they pulled off the whole thing. So you can tell he's got the makeup on underneath. Now, the way I think you're going to end up seeing stuff like this is that it was such a big story, right? Such a big story. But the media will never go back on it because it makes them look like they got it wrong and they're liars and they're stupid and they're, it doesn't mean they knew this guy was a criminal, right? I can see why incentives would force them to supporting and defending these people simply because conservatives were attacking them, right? So that's a scenario. You can't imagine the person who wrote this NBC article actually knew that these people were pervs. But Cernovich brings up this point, and he brings it up a lot, that you can expect pervs to end up in the media in this case, because just like you can expect them to end up in public schools, just like you can expect them to end up anywhere where they can actually help the general effort to persuade and change the narrative along these things, right? So there is a model that predicts they would go there, and it is, guess which one it is? It's the follow the money model, right? It's the follow the money model. So in this case, the media companies can't really go back and say they're really stupid and they got it wrong. They can't really address any of this. They just have to keep rolling with it and keep moving on and all of those things. So it's the same reason why now there's a politician, and this is the reason why I bring up Fetterman, the reason why I bring up the case with the perverts masturbating in the park and at the Dodger Stadium and the media covering for it, is because there's another story today, which I think will allow the follow the money case to really become explicit, not just in a surface level, right? Like, oh, they got a little more money or anything like that. This goes down to the spiritual level of following money, and why I think you're going to get more people who are able to actually become Bitcoiners because of the internal changes it brings to people. And it's this case. So last year, if you remember, or in 2019, Virginia had a governor change, right? The governor before him was dressing in Ku Klux Klan. He was a Democrat. He was always in the Ku Klux Klan outfits, did a lot of blackface. He was like a Trudeau guy. He did a lot of blackface, right? And they got, he never had to answer for it, right? He never got canceled. He apologized. He's also one of the folks on record for managing live abortions. You ever heard of those live abortions, right? Yeah. So he's given an interview talking all about live abortions, right? And then people coming to pick up the material. This guy is like straight from the pits of hell. So he lost. And a Youngkin was his name, a Republican won. A lot of people think this Youngkin guy actually was the answer to Trump politics because he could be as conservative, but it didn't set your brain on fire. So you had all the Ann Coulters saying, we need this guy. Youngkin is much better than Trump, right? But he seems like a little more of a DeSantis kind of fella. As in, if he didn't have a guy like Matt Gaetz telling him what to do all the time, it would show. Now I don't know anything about Youngkin, so don't tell me. So he's got a candidate running against him this time, right? Or no, maybe she's not running for the leadership. Never mind. No. She's just running for the actual Virginia House, Democrat. So it turns out that she got caught. She's like a doctor, right? But it turns out that someone has found that she's got some porn. She's made some porn, right? So this woman running for office has made a little bit of porn, right? And now she's saying it's an illegal invasion of my privacy. But the chances she actually posted the porn herself to earn money on Chatterbait, which I guess is like a porn thing where you get, I don't know, streaming money to you or something. So Bowtied Ranger, another bowtied person, says, selfish and narcissistic woman is about to put her children through hell so she can fulfill some low-level political aspirations. There's 0% chance her kids don't get bullied at school over this. Ladies, don't do porn, and if you do, repent and don't ever run for office. But Alex Berenson, his instinct is different, right? He says, sure, she and her husband hoard themselves online for very little money. On the other hand, her experience is an almost too perfect metaphor for our politics. She offered to let people to watch her get fucked in the ass. So, pros and cons. So Berenson here, right? Now we don't, Berenson, he's a gift to humanity, right? A constant skeptic, a person who's going to say what's on his mind. He is not going to self-censor. I don't think he's right about a lot of stuff, but you need people like this in our society, and him jumping in on this one puts it perfectly. And it does get to the spiritual heart of the question we're talking about. If you get into a system where you're following the money, and this system is only going to breed whorebags like this, right? There's only whorebags coming from the fiat system. Only whorebags. That's all that's left is whorebags who want to be in politics and want to get a little money for getting videotaped, getting banged, right? So that looks like what's going on here. And the upshot of this, here's what Charlie Kirk says: Democrats are running a prostitute for the Virginia House, who did sex acts for money on a website called Chatterbait. Yes, online prostitution is still prostitution. In response for being called out for this lifestyle, Gibson says her critics are invading her privacy. Everything she did was public for the whole planet to see, and that they broke the law. The New York Times is repeating this joke of a claim. Of course, if the Democrats are suddenly anti-porn and anti-prostitution, I'm all ears. But they aren't. They just want to win an election. They then go back to putting porn into elementary schools. So, look, the follow the money thing goes right to that, right? It goes right to the type of people and what motivates them and what incentivizes them. And I don't think it's the money here, right? I think it's what Alex Berenson says, right? It's the low-level political ambitions, right? The low-level political ambitions for not a lot of money, right? So, nevertheless, it is still a part of it, right? So you get that, you get the follow the money, which I think anyway is going to continue to play a role in describing what's going on with censorship, right? We saw that the national security apparatus has paid Facebook and tried to pay Twitter to censor people. You got Owen Schroyer, right, going into jail for 60 days today, right? He's the InfoWars correspondent. He wasn't even at January 6th. He's there for actual speech crimes, right? That's a new thing. And you can tell the edifice around that is what we've all seen for a long time. It is an attempt at punishing people. It's another way, I think, right? If you can't censor them, you can actually cool down the amount of activity happening by tossing the ones who are foolish enough to do it into jail, right? So that would be like a target on me, right? Like, doing this show now is like, is it a speech crime, right? In Canada, it is. I can't run the show out of Canada. I have to run everything out of the United States because I can't do this based in Canada, even though I'm in Canada at the moment. I couldn't run like accounts and things like that out of it. So, you got this frame, right? You got this frame that I think is going to be more effective and more of a consolation or more anxiety lessening for people if they can just simply follow the money instead of listening to this person and that person, which science is correct. None of that, right? It's basically who is paying whom, what money are they making, what money are they working for, and that should tell you enough of what you need to know. And I think anyway that, if you guys saw yesterday in Las Vegas, there was a huge cyber attack, right? So none of the MGM stuff was working. Financial transactions weren't working. Mobile keys weren't working. Now, all of this in the context of, again, follow the money, right? Pretty soon we're going to be in a scenario where this happens at an even larger scale. It's not just Las Vegas, right? So the systems that are being manipulated and controlled, the money that's being spent, the entire actual rails of it even are having trouble. And I don't think that's going to stop, right? FedNow and all these things aren't going to save anyone. So there you go. I think the follow the money meme is going to become the compass, the orientation, the wayfinder for more and more people. And if that happens, we're going to break apart the fake political divisions. And, there was a really great tweet by our friend Marty Bent, who we love. And here's what he says, right? He says, there is no bigger intellectual time suck than national politics. The amount of time that is wasted discussing politicians, elections, and policy is mind-boggling. It's a never-ending cycle that takes people away from productive endeavors, right? And he's so right. He's exactly right. And, what we're doing here, I don't think is following, like, we're not like hoping that some Republican gets some good policy together and then the world is better, right? No. We're for John Fetterman getting more airtime to do his oh, I'm not afraid of anyone asking questions about Joe Biden and his criminality because I know it doesn't make a difference. If I'm a mentally handicapped person and can still win an election, what do I have to care? Right? So look, it is an entire waste of time if you think of it as sports ball or anything like that. But if you think of it as Moneyball, if you actually go into seeing the capacity of these systems to perpetuate forward, which I don't think there is anymore. I think that if you follow the money, this system self-immolates. The incentives don't actually line up to grow it, right? The whole thing is based on Nancy Pelosi being able to front run Wall Street one more time while they vote on things in the last carpetbagging days of the green or the red and blue dichotomy, right? That's about all they have left. So no one should bother about that sort of sports ball aspect. But the Moneyball, now Moneyball being different than baseball, Moneyball being the mathematical application of a whole bunch of metrics that show you how to actually win the game, right? Versus how to make the game look a certain way on television. So Moneyball ended up having a huge effect on baseball, right? It changed the way we play the game, defensive shifts, everything changed when they understood more about the cost of a team and the cost of producing a run and the cost of producing a win. And to this day, it's still the system that helps motivate and push baseball forward. And that's really the advantage that Bitcoiners have here, is that we are playing a type of money ball that is not the same sports ball that you see in politics. It's a completely different game. And because we're playing a completely different game, it's very hard for the other side to even see how much success we have, right? That's why the schools thing is important, right? We're going to win the schools thing. We've already, I think, put the pieces in place and have taught financial literacy and energy literacy to a pretty nice, sizable part of the population, right? Now, it's only going to grow. Think about the numbers for a second, right? What's 1% of the world, right? 8 billion, what is that? 80 million people. So the people sitting just in this room, we're further along than the top 80 million people in the world, right? We're in the top, less than a million as far as how aware we are of things breaking, things moving forward. And Bitcoiners, right, are probably the most informed of that 80 million. That, I'm saying 1% of the population understands what's going on in the world, right? Biden, United States, all that. So that's 80 million. You crunch that down even further. Eventually, you just get to small groups like this. But because we understand the nature of these changes, in a sense, right? Not in every intellectual aspect of them, but just directionally, we can see where things are headed, right? Unless there is something nuts, like Elon Musk is killed or Trump is killed, which I said yesterday is what I'm seeing. That's actually what I'm seeing. I continue to believe that the UFO conversation was a test. It was a pen test, right? A penetration test to see exactly how much reach these lies have. If the number gets to a certain level, it's gonzo. I can't see any other way. There's no other purpose for these alien discussions. There was aliens again yesterday in Mexico, where they brought the bodies. They brought bodies of aliens now, right? They got the bodies there, right? What is it going to happen? I don't know. I think it continues to be a test, almost like Fetterman was a test. Can we, and Biden before, right? Can we nominate and elect a brain dead person to this role? Yes. Okay. How much more can we do, right? If you're in that game, that's what you're thinking. Now, Trump abducted by aliens. Yeah, it could be. Yeah. Very good. So, and thinking to become a Bitcoin Buddha. And here's a subject as a feature, not the fiat system bug. Yeah. And here we are, right? We're seeing it happen. So that's the good news. We can see it, and we can talk about, I don't like when people call her Pocahontas, Pocahontas. It's over, right? But we got to talk about Elizabeth Warren. We'll do that tomorrow. We love Pocahontas. All right. Let's see what we got here. Some comments, and then I gotta go. I got some stuff to do this morning. A lot of comments, though. Wow. Yeah, sorry to hear about your trouble, Veterans Cannabis. I'm surprised, though. I mean, I've well, what's in my wallet? I love all these tips for our friend Veterans Cannabis, folks. Coinbase thing workout, yeah. Thanks for asking. The phone agent said they will be immediately. My call was stopped, then was blocked from signing in. My online account, my wallet was locked. Whoa. Jesus. Very curious how did my... I had a similar... I never ever leave my funds on exchanges anymore. Yeah, bummer. Sorry to hear. Yeah. Well, I'll be meeting with some Coinbase folks probably in Amsterdam. We'll see. So maybe I can chat with them. Use Sparrow, Nunchuck, Wasabi, Blockstream Green. Back it up with hardware wallet. Sleep in peace at night. There you go. Well, it was in my wallet. Is it still on an exchange? Yeah, it should be. I'm sorry to hear about your shoes. Yeah. Yeah, this is good advice here. Stay persistent and follow up. Yeah. No keys, no cheese. Yeah, seed words should never touch the internet. Yeah, well, learning is lesson, but it's a bummer. Not easy to learn. Mine was double that cost. Uh-oh. Hard lesson, but an important one. Jeez. Is real. And shout out to Osan Air Force Base. There you go. Osan Air Force Base. I don't know where that is, Wild Hustle. I used to spend time in the Korean bases, Korean U.S. bases. I have 30 times more in my Swan account that I do trust. Yeah, but they've got that. See who the Swan custodian is? Ripple. What a sense of humor God has. The cost of living sounds infinite and long enough. Stay safe out there. It is. I mean, I've lost a ton in my life too, guys. I would hodl on BlockFi Celsius. Didn't know why self-custody was important. Yeah. There's no way a normie can watch you if they don't have the ability to recognize sardonic irony. Yeah, maybe, Thomas. Maybe. But we don't need to lower the IQ. It's okay if this remains a high IQ space. Because they are under mind control, behave like robot monkeys. They sure do. The path to hyper-Bitcoinization is constant rug pulling until cold storage is achieved. Yeah, I agree with that. I still make mistakes, believe it or not. It sort of never goes away. They didn't do the performance they were booked to do. They had a thing before they let the public into the stadium. It was sad. Oh, this is the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. Lots of people protested outside the stadium. Yeah, well, now one of those performances, a public whacker offer, and is got arrested. So there you go. Don't whack off at kids' parks. You think Americans have had a color revolution and a government coup all rolled into one? JFK, you've been paper clipped. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's what's going on. Yeah. Americans have had a color revolution and a government coup, and it's been going on since JFK. That's my reading. That's why we say 2024 is about 1964 to end 1984. That's where we're at. Not all or every single person. I'd say 85% though. Yeah. Whores and grifters. Yeah. It's self-censorship through coercion. Absolutely. Yeah. Thought crimes. Watch out, Nolan. Indeed. Yeah. See here, Daniel's got this one. Fiat's financial coerced. Yeah. Que bono, right? Who profits is the only compass through the fog of war. That's it. That's a follow the money, right? That's the best you can do. Absolutely the best you can do. Cyber attacks are probably the easiest false flags to stage. I never thought of that, Nick, but you're right. They really are. No one knows how to look into that, right? Like internet down is as powerful as a cyber hack. You're right. I never thought of that. Bitcoin fixes that. The permanency. Yeah. Oh, what's this? I know a security VP at MGM. He actually served under Biden when he was VP. Looks like incompetence is contagious. Here's the that one. There you go. Trump abducted by aliens. Yeah, you never know. That's a good headline, though. Thinking of becoming a Bitcoin Buddha. For sure, man. Idiocracy come to life. Oh, man. You know who I wish? I wish Macho Camacho would run for president. Have you guys? Oh, no, they're terrible. The Big Mike pictures of Macho Camacho. That's why I don't think she's going to run, Michelle. I don't think so. I don't, unless it's to keep everyone out of jail. But I think the Obamas get a pass. Let's say, right? I think they get a pass. So there you go. Curious, how did my wallet get hacked? I don't know. Veterans Cannabis. I don't know if it did it get hacked. I mean, you have a dispute with them. They might have just like bricked your account. Were you looking for lost funds or access to funds? That's what I don't understand. If it's lost, it'll be a little harder, I guess. But I don't really. I used to know the Coinbase security protocols around their storage stuff. They changed it. I don't know them anymore. That was a thing we used to cover. How, before it was secret. Aslam, ready for Mass 2.0? We're not doing it. I didn't do 1.0. I'm not doing 2.0. That's it for me. I'm out of there. All right, team. That's all I got for today. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. We got another great one coming tomorrow. Right? We're going to be doing all kinds of fun stuff. News is picking up, getting lots of stuff happening. What I find, though, is the news is the same every day now. It's just like egregious bad behavior on the part of Democrat politicians, the media, and funds were transferred. Okay. Yeah, that's a different story. That's a different story. Yeah, I don't know the answer to it, but man. All right, team. That's all I got. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. News is picking up, as I said, to unknown address, not authorized. Jesus. Nolan, you got to get into Timcast IRL. Yeah, I think so, Shroomskia. We had, I talked about it with them back in May when we had, what's his name? He's great. He's on the Timcast show all the time. He spoke at our event. I'm trying to remember his name now. I'm having a blank. He's a great guy. He's like on the set. So he said, yeah, come. I just haven't really followed up, but I got to do that. Yeah, I would love to go down and hang out in the place. It's cool. All right, team. See you tomorrow.